His childhood diaries reveal not dreams of war, but observations of nature. He spent hours tracking animals in the forest, writing down how they moved and how they reacted to sounds. He learned patience, learned to follow a target, learned to predict another creature's actions. Later, he would say, hunting gave me the foundation of my tactics. And this was no exaggeration, it was true. Many aces of the First World War were impulsive, fiery, emotional. Manfred, however, was a hunter, someone who waited, analyzed, and acted only when the opportunity was perfect. When Europe descended into war, no one imagined the scale of the coming catastrophe. Young men went to the front almost enthusiastically. Manfred was no exception. He was just 22 when he entered combat as part of a cavalry regiment. But within a few months it became clear. The age of glorious cavalry charges was over. Neither speed nor bravery helped. Machine guns and barbed wire destroyed the old romantic vision of war. Reichhofen saw death, chaos, and the futility of old methods. He felt he was not meant to be a pawn in the trench slaughter. He wanted space, freedom of decision. Aviation became a window into another world. Airplanes of the time shook in the wind and could break apart from a sharp maneuver. Every mission had a 50-50 chance of survival. But for Manfred, this danger, this instability, this newness was exactly what he had been missing. Dynamism, risk, freedom for his own mind, rather than the repetition of someone else's orders. At first he became an observer, a deadly and critically important profession. Flying in the rear seat, taking photographs, scouting enemy positions, returning under fire. This hardened him and taught him to see the battlefield as a whole. The First World War often appears to us through images of endless trenches, mud, artillery barrages, and human suffering. But one of its most astonishing aspects was the birth of aerial warfare. The sky, which for centuries had been unreachable, suddenly became a new battlefield, and the people who rose into it seemed almost supernatural. They were called Knights of the Air. Their duels transformed war into something that looked beautiful, dangerous, and romantic all at once. And among all who entered this new realm, one man left a deeper mark than anyone else. Manfred von Richthofen, the Red Baron. To understand his legend, we must understand the time in which he lived. The late 19th and early 20th century was an era in which technology leapt forward within a single generation. The telegraph, the telephone, electricity, automobile, and finally flight. People were still adjusting to the idea that a human being could rise above the earth. Aviation was something between a miracle and a deadly experiment. And when war began, the airplane evolved from a toy for the wealthy into a weapon of war. Manfred was born in 1892 into a family where the words duty, honor, and service were not abstract ideals, but everyday reality. The house of the Richthofen stood upon traditions so strong they seemed absorbed into its walls. The boy grew up surrounded by stories of ancestors who were officers, generals, heroes. He was expected to continue this line. He was raised as a future soldier. Manfred's early years were filled with sports, hunting, horseback riding, and strict lessons of discipline. But he also had a natural curiosity and a calm self-confidence that everyone around him noticed. His famous Fokker Dr. Y became a symbol of the era. His low speed was offset by incredible maneuverability. The triplane could turn almost in place, and in Richthofen's hands it became an extension of his own body. The Allies hated the plane, but they did not hate the machine. They hated the man in the cockpit. Despite his fame, Manfred remained unlike most other aces. He didn't drink, didn't throw loud parties, didn't seek out women like many pilots did. He was disciplined, almost introverted. Evenings were spent with card games, reading, writing in his diary. He was a man of routine. Dinner at the same time, checking the aircraft, preparing for the next mission, a short rest. His comrades said, he wasn't our friend, he was our commander. And they respected this. July 6th, 1917 became one of the most dramatic episodes of his life. A bullet struck his head, knocked him unconscious, and blinded him. He fell without seeing anything. On any other day, in any other fight, this would have been the end. But in an incredible moment, he awoke just long enough to level the aircraft and landed, completely blind and losing blood. Witnesses said, we couldn't believe a man who couldn't see managed to land that way. But this wound had long-lasting effects. He became more irritable, more tense. He suffered from headaches, sudden outbursts, moments of deep exhaustion. Later, researchers would suggest this was due to brain trauma, damage that never fully healed. Still, he continued flying, continued fighting, continued being a symbol. His victories reached 80, a number no one else achieved in that war. But the war was ending. Germany was weakening. Pilots were dying one after another. Richthofen understood he would not survive to the end. He said, I believe I will die in battle, but as long as I live, I must do my duty. He was not a romantic, he was a soldier. On April 21st, 1919, he made his final flight. He broke his own golden rule, never chase the enemy too far. He was exhausted, worn down, perhaps still suffering from the effects of his wound. He pursued a British plane too far into enemy territory and came under fire from ground machine gunners. Later experts would determine that the fatal bullet came from below and behind, consistent with fire from Australian ground troops. When his plane crashed, soldiers ran to the wreckage and found a young man still breathing. He tried to speak. His final moments were quiet. One witness said, he died peacefully, as if he knew this was how it had to be. The Allies buried him with full military honors. The wreaths read, to a gallant and worthy foe. It is a rare honor to bury an enemy as a hero. After the war, his name became myth. Stories surrounded him, that he was a knight in the sky, that he had superhuman reflexes, that he could see through clouds. But the truth was different. He was a man of extraordinary discipline and composure. He was not fortune's favorite. He was a professional who learned to win where the odds were smallest. His tactics, his methods, his analytical mind became the basis of aerial warfare. Many aces of the Second World War studied Richthofen. His books, letters, and notes became textbooks for future pilots. And even today, more than 100 years later, the image of the Red Baron lives on. His red aircraft is a symbol of courage, strategy, and mastery. His name is known even to those uninterested in history. His legacy is not merely 80 victories. His legacy is the birth of a culture of flight, the respect for the enemy, the clear understanding that war is a realm of intellect. The Red Baron was a man who turned the sky into a stage, a man who managed in an age of chaos to keep a cool head, a man who became a legend not because he saw glory, but because he did his job better than anyone else. And as long as airplanes fly in the sky, his memory will not disappear. But he wanted more. He wanted the controls in his own hands. He wanted to decide the outcome of the fight himself. When he entered the pilot school, his persistence surprised the instructors. He was not a technical genius, but he was a genius of concentration. Richthofen repeated movements over and over until they became automatic. He did not rely on inspiration. He built a foundation. And by the time he was transferred to a combat unit, he was ready. The true turning point came with his meeting with Oswald Boelke, the man who can be called the father of aerial tactics. Boelke was a cold, analytical thinker, the first to understand that aerial combat wasn't a circus performance but mathematics. He created the famous Dicta Boelke, a set of rules still studied by pilots today. These were revolutionary ideas. Maintain altitude, avoid chaotic dogfights, attack only with advantage, fight as a coordinated group, control your emotions. Manfred became Boelke's ideal student, obedient, attentive, free of unnecessary ego. He absorbed these rules as if they were laws of nature. He never broke them for the sake of a beautiful kill. He was precise, cold, calculating. After his first victory in September 1916, he did something that would later become his trademark. He began painting his aircraft red. Not all at once, at first just parts, then the entire plane. It was both a challenge and a declaration. He wanted to be seen. He wanted enemies to know exactly who had appeared in the sky. It was a psychological strike. Allied pilots began telling each other, "If you see the red plane, run." New pilots learned the names of German aces, and Richthofen's name was the most frightening. By the end of 1916, he had become one of Germany's most famous pilots. And when he was given command of Vyasta 11, it felt as if the country's fate had shifted in the air itself. He became the leader of a truly elite group. His strict discipline turned young pilots into precise instruments, and his own effectiveness grew almost geometrically. The spring of 1917 entered history as Bloody April. The Allied air forces suffered catastrophic losses. That month, Richthofen shot down 22 aircraft, a record that seems unbelievable even today. He became not just an ace, but a national hero. Newspapers printed his portrait. Articles were written about him. Children collected postcards with his image. And although he did not seek fame, he understood its power for national morale.